72-hour deadline threatens to kill over 400 captives.
This ultimatum is a psychological operation warfare by the terrorists. We are talking about 416 lives.
Senegal National Assembly holds ministerial hearing to strengthen oversight. Opposition parties in the Gambia rally to unite against President Barrow ahead of the presidential elections.
Opposition parties need to unite to form a coalition because that's the only way that they have a chance.
Maybe they can come together to get the incumbent out. It can also be like the 2016.
Hearing commences for candidates seeking UN Secretary General position as Guterres leaves office in early 2027. Please stay tuned for the details of these stories and more.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Thank you for staying with us. We begin, and it is 24 hours into the 72-hour ultimatum issued to the federal government of Nigeria by suspected Boko Haram insurgents. The kidnappers are demanding action over the fate of more than 400 people abducted in Borno State, northeastern region of the country. They have threatened to kill or relocate the victims if their demands are not met before the deadline expires. WADR's Abuja correspondent Yechenu Sasitu reports.
The ultimatum was delivered in a video released by the insurgents on Tuesday, showing about 416 abducted victims, mostly women and children. In the footage, the group warns that failure to meet its demands within 72 hours would lead to the relocation of the captives to undisclosed locations. The victims were reportedly abducted during an earlier attack in Ngoshe, a community in Borno State. Local sources say mediation efforts are ongoing, with some groups acting as intermediaries between the insurgents and authorities. Reacting to the situation, Senator Iroegbu, founder of Global Sentinel, describes the ultimatum as a form of psychological warfare.
This ultimatum is a psychological operation warfare by the terrorists to create panic among the public and also rush government into decision making. But that's notwithstanding, because we are talking about 416 lives. Our heart to them and their families who might have been going through some disturbing moment.
He adds that the government must rise to its responsibility by protecting citizens and ensuring their safety.
It's the responsibility of government to ensure that every life of Nigeria matters and to ensure that this cycle of mass abduction is not something that is like a cycle repeating itself. But every measure must be ensured that the lives are secure.
Stakeholders are also calling for urgent intervention to secure the victims' release. The federal government is yet to issue an official response to the ultimatum. For WADR, Yechenu Sasitu in Abuja.
Meanwhile, in Mali, Russian authorities say 2 hostages have been freed during an operation carried out by Russian forces. The captives, who include a Russian and a Ukrainian national, were being held by an armed group affiliated with Al-Qaeda in the Sahel region. Augustine Bilkoli reports.
2 hostages, a Russian national and a Ukrainian national, kidnapped in Niger in 2024, were freed in Mali following a military operation announced by the Africa Corps Group. According to this Russian paramilitary organization, its units conducted a special operation that resulted in the rescue of the 2 men who are employees of a geological exploration company. They had been held since July 2024 by a group affiliated with Al-Qaeda active in the Sahel region. The 2 former hostages spent nearly 2 years in captivity. In a video released by Africa Corps, one of the rescuers described the operation as swift and very professional, stating that he was extracted in less than an hour. The group specified that the 2 men were evacuated aboard a Russian military aircraft and are currently safe en route to Russia for medical treatment and recovery. No further details were provided regarding the exact circumstances of the operation or the precise location of their release.
That was a report by Augustine Bill Coley. Now we focus on Amnesty International's annual report, which warns of widespread abuses across West and Central Africa. Published in April 2026, that is the 21st, the document undercovers unlawful killings by government forces and armed groups, sexual abuses, and crackdowns on dissent during elections throughout 2025. The State of the World's Human Rights Report also reveals the millions of people remain displaced by ongoing conflict and climate-related disasters. Amnesty describes these acts as deepening human rights challenges across the region. Abibatu Gologo, Deputy Director of Amnesty International in charge of Western Central Africa, explains to WADR.
Conflict-related sexual violence remains widespread, for instance, in the Central African Republic, as reported by the UN. And also many women and girls continue to be subjected to female genital mutilation, sexual violence, and child and forced marriage in many countries in our region.
Overall, Amnesty International notes that populations in Western Central Africa are deprived of their economic and social rights. How does this manifest itself in the daily lives of these populations?
Yes, because of the ongoing conflicts in the region, millions of people are suffering from food insecurity and forced displacement. We focus on armed conflicts, ongoing armed conflicts, and which continue in the Sahel region, for instance, in Cameroon, in Central African Republic, and in Nigeria. And we've also noted serious violations committed by both state forces and armed groups.
That was Abibatu Gologo, Deputy Regional Director in charge of campaign at Amnesty International West and Central Africa.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Thank you for staying with us. Here in Senegal, the National Assembly is conducting a series of hearings with government ministers before its standing committee. The move aims to strengthen parliamentary oversight. According to a statement cited by the Senegalese press agency, the hearings are designed to better structure and systemize challenges and exchanges between the executive and legislative branches of the government. Sankule Janko completes the story.
The ministerial hearings kick off with the Ministries of Higher Education and the Environment. The proceedings are expected to continue until May 8, 2026. Senegalese Parliament emphasizes that this exercise will allow members of Parliament to carry out its mission of monitoring and overseeing government action within a better organized and a more effective framework. For Ibrahim Amboj of the Senegalese think tank Africa Jom Center, this initiative strengthens accountability.
This hearing of the ministers is perfectly in line with the dialogue that must exist between the executive branch and Parliament, because the average citizen has the right to know how things are done, and particularly about the actions of each minister. So we are going to try to see what conclusions will emerge from these hearings, all the while hoping that everything will be done transparently and that the ministers will truly speak frankly about the issues that are causing concern.
Additionally, governance expert Sheikh Tijan Sise says this new parliamentary practice is part of a broader effort to modernize public action in Senegal, promoting transparency, accountability and performance.
There can be an asymmetry of knowledge or skills. Today, the minister arrives with his staff, his technicians, his experts, facing off against members of parliament which lack sufficient technical resources to challenge the ministries. It is critical that the assembly be equipped with expert personnel to conduct rigorous work and to analyze the information produced by the various ministries in terms of implementation, budget execution, and overall performance.
The Senegalese National Assembly indicates that the new system should give standing committees greater visibility into their work, thereby encouraging more regular hearings and more in-depth debates on public policy.
That was Sankule Janko with that report. Let's quickly inform you that the hearing has begun for the 4 candidates seeking to succeed Antonio Guterres as Secretary General of the United Nations. They are Macky Sall of Senegal, Michelle Bachelet of Chile, Rebecca Greenspan of Costa Rica, and Rafael Grossi of Argentina. The hearing, which commenced on Tuesday, 21st, in New York, allows the candidates to present their visions for leading the global body for early 2027. The process comes at a time of mounting challenges for the United Nations, with candidates outlining how they plan to steer the organization through what they describe as a period of deep crisis. Abdullah Hassan explains the 4 candidates' platforms.
There are 4 candidates in the race for the UN Secretary General position. Former Senegalese President Macky Sall emphasizes in his vision the intrinsic link between peace and development. He intends to combat poverty, inequality, exclusion, and climate vulnerability. Burundi, which holds the rotating presidency of the African Union, supports Macky Sall's candidacy, while 20 of the AU's 55 member states have opposed it, and his own country, Senegal, does not support him. Michelle Bachelet is one of the women running. The 74-year-old socialist, Chile's first female president, previously headed the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. In her vision for the UN, Bachelet explains that her experience has prepared her to face this era in which the international system is confronting challenges of unprecedented scale, urgency, and complexity. While her own country is not supporting her, she can count on Mexico and Brazil, which are backing her candidacy. Another woman who also wants to lead the UN is Rebecca Greenspan, former Vice President of Costa Rica. Rebecca affirms her commitment to the UN Charter, which for her is a constant warning against the dangers of dehumanization, mistrust, and fragmentation. And finally, Rafael Grossi. The 65-year-old Argentinian advocates for a return of the UN to its founding principles, saving humanity from the scourge of war. However, the final decision rests with the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, namely the United States, China, Russia, the United Kingdom, and France. Antonio Guterres' successor will take office on January 1, 2027.
That was Abdullah Hassan with those details. Now to politics in West Africa. Opposition parties in the Gambia are holding discussions to form a coalition against President Adama Barrow ahead of the December 2026 elections. At least 7 parties attended an initial meeting on Tuesday at the Kairaba Beach Hotel in the Kanifing Municipal Council. A joint statement says the talks are spearheaded by the Alliance for Democracy and Development, ADD, which invited 14 parties, though only half were present. From Banjul, Sang Donald Mendy completes the story.
The parties unanimously agreed that the leadership of the Alliance for Democracy and Development, ADD, should engage with other coalition groups to consolidate a single opposition force ahead of the December elections. Political analysts say unity among opposition groups could be crucial in the 2026 presidential race. Political scientist Biran Gay offers his perspective, but warns that forming and maintaining a coalition often presents significant challenges.
It has always my view that I think opposition parties need to unite to form a coalition because that's the only way that they have a chance. But also based on past experience, there are some challenges forming a coalition party because compromises will have to be made. And again, forming a coalition, obviously, UDP will not want to compromise with its position of being the dominant political party, and also they will want to lead the coalition.
Discussions also focused on creating a common platform that balances the party's interest with broader national priorities. Meanwhile, there have been mixed reactions from citizens following the announcement of these discussions.
Some parties, in fact, make their stand that they are not forming any coalition without them heading as a flag bearer. without them heading the coalition as a flag bearer.
It is going to be a big miracle to see the entire opposition of the Gambia unite against Barrow, which is all what we're yearning for.
Maybe they can come together to at least get the incumbent out, but it can also be like the 2016.
Participants described the talks as productive and identified two immediate priorities. These include reaching out to the 7 parties that were absent and expanding engagement to include other political actors, movements and civil society organizations. With the second round of talks scheduled for Saturday, April 25, 2026, opposition parties are repositioning themselves as the election atmosphere intensifies in Banjul. For WADR, I am Sangdana Mendy, reporting from Banjul.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Suspected Boko Haram gives Nigerian government 72-hour deadline, threatens to kill over 400 captives. Senegal National Assembly hold ministerial hearing to strengthen oversight. Opposition parties in the Gambia rally to unite against President Adama Barrow ahead of the December elections. Hearing commences for candidates seeking UN Secretary General position as Guterres leaves office in early 2027. Still ahead in the news, we have press review, guest interview, and sports news. Stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Thank you for staying with us. We remain talking about politics, and Nigeria's opposition coalition, the African Democratic Congress, ADC, has issued a strong warning to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, signaling an escalation in political tensions ahead of the next presidential elections. The party suggests that any direct response from the president to its activities reflects growing concern within the ruling camp about the strength of the emerging opposition alliance. Imo Edit brings the details in this report.
The African Democratic Congress ADC National Legislators Forum, in a televised press conference, accused senior officials in the presidency of interfering in opposition party affairs and ongoing legal disputes, alleging actions that raise concerns about executive influence on the judiciary and electoral processes. The ADC leaders attributed recent comment to the Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, suggested support for litigants involved in disputes within the ADC. Speaking on behalf of the forum is former member representing Bende Federal Constituency, Honorable Nena Elendu.
It is therefore deeply troubling that the same democratic space that once enabled his rise now appears to be narrowing under his watch. We respectfully call on Mr. President to practice in governance the very principles he once advocated and championed while he was in the opposition, which were to protect dissent, uphold judicial independence, and to allow genuine democratic contestation to flourish.
The legislators further asserted that their intervention was not partisan but aimed at defending democratic governance, citing past involvement in national political crisis, including the 2010 constitutional transition following the illness of former President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua. For his part, former Senator Dino Milai used very strong language to describe the state of insecurity and killings in Nigeria, questioning the lack of accountability and urgency, suggesting that such killings have become normalized.
Because in Benue alone, over 6,000 people have died within the time that President Bola Ahmed took over. That's the statistics by Amnesty International. In Plateau, over 2,000 people have lost their lives according to Amnesty International. In the last 3 years, we've lost 2 brigadier generals to Boko Haram. And I begin to ask myself, they are not just brigadier generals, they are commanding officers of their garrisons.
The presidency and INEC have not publicly responded to the allegations at the time of filing this report.
Imo Edet filed that report.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
We now return to Banjul for the press review with Sang Donald Mendy.
We start in our review today with a look on the Standard newspaper, which says National People's Party (NPP) calls opposition coalition talks delusional. The statement comes as 7 political opposition parties recently opened talks to unite against the ruling NPP as presidential election looms. National Council for Civic Education reminds voters attempting a deceitful registration risks jail term or fine of $500,000, which is equivalent to $6,850. Port workers protest over poor working conditions under new management. Yesterday morning, over 700 workers of the Gambia Ports Authority marched to the GPA office to hand over their petition to the managing director. Let us now turn our attentions to the Point newspaper, which says ECOWAS rules out assistive devices program for children with disabilities. Gambia seeks global funding to sustain landmark transitional justice drive, and registration of journalists removed from new regulations, says Information Minister Ismail Assisi. And finally, let us check on the Alcamba Times, which is our last stop. The paper is reporting that ECOWAS launches major assistive devices program for children with disabilities. Region 6 schools set to boycott 2026 National Inter-Schools Athletics Championships. And that does it for this edition of Press Review. Back to you in the studio.
That was Sang Donald Mendy with the press review from the Gambia.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest this afternoon is Abibatu Gologo, the Deputy Regional Director in charge of campaigns at Amnesty International for West and Central Africa. She discusses the details of Amnesty International's annual report, which highlights widespread human rights abuses in these regions. The document reveals little progress, particularly by civil society organizations, but urges state authorities and regional stakeholders to make more effort in addressing issues of rights violations.
Let's start with people who were arbitrarily detained. Most of them have been released. And also we have noticed the opening of judicial investigations into political violence, for instance, in Senegal and also in Togo, where there were protests in the last years and where people were also arrested. And positive news for women and girls in the region. The first one comes from Burkina Faso, where the new Persons and Family Code has been adopted. And now the legal minimum age of marriage is 18 for both girls and boys, which provides a stronger legal protection for women and girls. And also in Sierra Leone, law was also adopted for that almost the same purpose, and we really commend that in the region.
Now, what you will consider as the challenges?
Oh, yes, there are many challenges. So I will start with gender-based violence. Currently in our region in West and Central Africa, societal norms combined with the actions of certain individuals and organizations hostile to fundamental rights continue to fuel discrimination and gender-based violence against women and girls. Conflict-related sexual violence remains widespread. For instance, in Central African Republic, as reported by the UN, and also many women and girls continue to be subjected to female genital mutilation, sexual violence, and child and forced marriage in many countries in our region. And also some states have adopted, like in Gambia, in 2015, a law against FGM, but unfortunately, people tried to reverse that law, and end of last year, it went to the Supreme Court, and there's still a debate about how to keep that law in place in Gambia.
Overall, Amnesty International notes that populations in West and Central Africa are deprived of their economic and social rights. How does this manifest itself in the daily lives of these populations?
Yes, because of the ongoing conflicts in the region, millions of people are suffering from food insecurity and forced displacement. In addition to that, access to education and Africa has been severely affected by conflict, chronic underfunding, and the sharp decline in international aid, particularly following massive cuts from USAID funding. Like some people amongst the poorest cannot access basic medical care.
One of the reasons is that conflicts continue amid indifference and impunity. Do you believe this, Strength?
Yes, in our report, we focus on armed conflicts, ongoing armed conflicts, and which continue in the Sahel region, for instance, in Cameroon, in Central African Republic, and in Nigeria. And we've also noted serious violations committed by both state forces and armed groups. And unfortunately, impunity remains the norm as national justice mechanisms are dysfunctional. And initiatives such as the Special Criminal Court in CAR are weakened by the lack of funding from international organizations and community.
That was Abibatu Gologo, Deputy Regional Director in charge of campaign at Amnesty International, West and Central Africa. Now here comes sports with Sankule Janko with the latest news. FIFA has announced ticket sales for World Cup. Sankule, tell us more about this development.
Yes, and indeed the preparations are high because the FIFA World Cup is just in the next, the corner, some would say, well, because the Football Federation, the World Football Governing Body, has announced that a batch of tickets for all the 104 matches of the 2026 World Cup will go on sale today, Wednesday, April 22, as the countdown continues, Vernick, because the Global Football Body says the latest sales phase will open at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 3 p.m. GMT, that is here and other parts of the world. Tickets will be available exclusively through its official online platform. Fans are expected to access tickets across different matches and price categories as anticipations builds up ahead of the tournament in USA, Canada, and Mexico.
We are aware that some West African countries will be participating. We have Senegal and Ghana. So get your tickets for the World Cup.
Yes,
this
indeed.
Year.
Get your tickets. In another news, Nigeria's Super Falcons have climbed to 36 in the latest FIFA Women's World Rankings, maintaining their status as Africa's top-ranked team. The 9-time continental champions move up to one spot following a mixed-up run of results, including a friendly series split against Cameroon. They remain well ahead of the rivals, South Africa, next on the continent in the 56th place globally. While worldwide, Spain hold the number one position, followed by United States and England.
Thank you very much, Sankule. And that was the sport news with Sankule Janko. And we have come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Asek and Maudo Ju for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X, Instagram, and Facebook at WADR English. I am Veronique Njai. Good afternoon.
We thank you for listening to Newslink in Nigeria on Love FM Abuja and Darling FM Owerri. In the Gambia on Hot FM Banjul, Hilltop FM and Veritas Radio in Serekunda. Thank you for listening on Alternative Youth Radio Lofa County, Liberia, Radio Kegaman in Nimba County, and DCN Radio Riverses County. A big thank you to Radio Baft FM in Sierra Leone for listening, and in Ghana we thank Radio Pad in Damango and Royals FM in Wenchi. Thank you all for listening to Newslink.
WADR